Sony, Sony, Sony. Why? What's up guys, my name is Graham. I am a variety streamer over at twitch.tv/Graham Plays, and I also run this YouTube channel where I talk about anything in the gaming industry which happens to catch my eye. Well, at the end of my last video, which was a sort of Microsoft versus Sony piece, I did say that I would probably make more videos on this subject in the future. I just didn't think it would be this one right fucking immediately after it. But thanks to Sony, here we are. So what am I talking about? Well, it came out this week via an excellent report from Jason Schreier over at Bloomberg that Sony are remaking The Last of Us. 2013's The Last of Us is getting a remake. So there are two things that are particularly interesting about this and perhaps give us some insight into the mindset of the higher-ups at Sony and their kind of strategy going forward. The first is the fact that the remake exists at all in and of itself is interesting, for reasons we'll come to discuss. And the second is the story behind how this remake actually came about and sort of where it's at now in terms of its development. So for the purposes of background, that latter point is the thing I wanted to touch on first. And I would add that all of this information is via that Jason Schreier Bloomberg report, which I will link to in the description down below. So it reads very much like the Last of Us Remake project originally started as a bit of a sort of semi-secret side hustle. The story goes that around 30 members from Sony's internal visual arts group, who are a team of developers that rather than specialising in any one project or being attached to any one studio, they all pitch in to help Sony's other studios and partners get their games out the door, basically. So some people from this visual arts group understandably decided that contributing to other people's games is kind of not their lifetime goal, which is totally fine. They wanted to move up in the world, to graduate, and eventually work towards being able to make their own games and have their own studios. So about 30 of them splintered off and formed this team that began work on a Last of Us remake. They reportedly wanted to begin by remaking the first Uncharted game, but decided that was going to be too expensive and too difficult to do because they were effectively a side team. They had no budget. So Uncharted was just going to take too much work and resource that they didn't have. So they settled on remaking The Last of Us and they began work. So some time passes and this side team are developing a demo that they're due to show to Sony round about in November 2019, when there's some pretty high level shifts in management at Sony. A lot of high level people leave. Herman Hulst comes in and is appointed as the head of Worldwide Studios. Reportedly, Hulst eventually gets wind of this project and he's not fucking happy about it. I'm not happy! There's some suggestion that in particular he wasn't happy with the amount of money being devoted to it. So, Mr. Hulst decides it's time for a change. Initially, he decides to bring in Naughty Dog, the actual developers of the original Last of Us, in to assist with the project and help sort of guide it, but still with the original team very much leading it. However, as time goes on, what actually ends up happening is Naughty Dog more and more take the lead, and this team get pushed more back into the support role, which they were trying to get out of by doing this project. Ultimately, the original team ends up basically disbanding, and the project is now just with Naughty Dog for them to do. So TLDR, project still in development, Naughty Dog are developing it, the original team don't exist anymore. So there's quite a lot to unpack from that story, and as I say, just from the fact that they're even remaking The Last of Us at all, and it says some things I think about Sony's long-term strategy that add to the concern I was already talking about in my previous video. So first and foremost, the kind of elephant in the room is, why the fuck do we need a Last of Us remake? It came out in 2013. It was remastered pretty recently for the PlayStation 4. It looks good, it runs fine, it plays fine. I know multiple people who have played through it relatively recently. No problems with it whatsoever. It's fantastic. Why the fuck do we need a remake of it? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because there is a fancy new fucking HBO show coming out based on the first game, and it's a lazy fucking cash grab to cash in on people who've never played the game before. So undoubtedly this will release alongside the TV show, and it will, I mean, that is what it is. Now I guess the devil's advocate argument is Naughty Dog remaking the original Last of Us there's no way that's going to be a bad game, right? It's going to be good, it's going to look good, it's still going to play good. You know, it's more good video game, so how can we complain about that? And I take that point, right? Like, a lot of people will get this and will play it and will love it. Fine. Whatever, right? Cool, more power to you. I guess for me, I would much rather that Sony focus their time and their resources on things that are a bit more exciting and innovative. And I think there are a lot of other games out there that could be doing with a remake before you hit The Last of Us. Uncharted is a good example. Like, I have very fond memories of playing through the original Uncharted trilogy, but I don't envisage that the first game in particular probably holds up very well nowadays, being like a launch PS3 game. So, and there's other PS3 era games like Infamous. I liked the original Infamous, didn't like Infamous 2. Those were pretty like bare bones open world games. They were open world games from that period of time where kind of everyone was trying to do the GTA thing, but not as well as Rockstar were. But I think a remade Infamous, which takes on board all the things that developers have learned about the open world genre of games since then, would be really cool. And that is literally just the first two PlayStation franchises that came to my head as I was sitting chatting shit in this video. Like, and yeah, there's like developing new IP, do something new and cool. I think there is a deeper level to this conversation as well, beyond just I don't really care about a Last of Us remake, I don't think we need one. And that's what Sony crushing this team that started this project says about their overall philosophy now long term. And that's the thing that really fucking worries me. So let me start by asking you this. What have Sony got in their favour right now more than Microsoft, more than anyone else? What are Sony known for? What is the driving force that they use to implore consumers to buy their console over anyone else's on the market, or over PCs or whatever? For me at least anyway, it's their first party games, it's their exclusives, it's games from Naughty Dog, from Sucker Punch, from Guerrilla, and everyone in between that they've got. It's your Uncharted's, it's your God of War's, it's your Last of Us's, Last of Us I's, it's your Spider-Man's, it's those big fucking quadruple A first party games that are generally the best fucking games in the industry. They push the bar in terms of what you think a video game can be. So you might think based on that, this is good. They're like giving the project to Naughty Dog, and that's like what you would want, is it not? To me, that's like really low IQ, small forehead way to approach this situation. What you've got to remember is that your Naughty Dogs of the world, they all fucking started somewhere. Like, it took Sony a long, long time to get where they are just now, and they only got there by nurturing that talent early doors. Naughty Dog used to make fucking Crash Bandicoot, right? I mean, Crash Bandicoot doesn't really do anything for me, but people like it, whatever. It's miles away from Uncharted and The Last of Us. If you showed someone today who knew nothing about games Crash Bandicoot and then showed them The Last of Us and told them that they were made by the same person, I think they'd have a difficult time believing you. So Sony only got to where they are now by nurturing these studios, giving them room to grow, putting some trust in them, taking them under their wing a little bit, and fostering that talent. I'm sure at some point in Naughty Dog's history, for example, right, I'm guessing the same would be true of all these studios, right? At some point there was probably fucking little Neil Druckmann little Neil Druckmann and little Bruce Straley putting on their best suits and going to meet some executive at Sony saying, we don't want to make Crash Bandicoot anymore, we want to make something else, we're big boys now. And if Sony at that time had said, nah, fuck you, you're not doing that project, we're giving it to whoever our best studio was at the time, those games wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have those games that people will generally argue are the best games ever created. So what if this small team of 30 people that Sony have just crushed in 15-20 years would or could have been the people who were making that generation's Last of Us, you know? And Sony have just kicked him at the curb basically and squashed that potential. And what if there are other stories like this out there within Sony of other teams doing things, because I don't believe for a second this would be the only one, and that this is like common practice for Sony and becomes common practice for them going forward, as reports since that original Jason Schreier report seem to suggest is that this is very much in line with Sony's thinking, is that they're focusing on their big AAA studios and they're not really interested in anything else right now. At some point, your Naughty Dogs, your Sucker Punches, your other big studios, they're going to start dipping. They're not going to be producing the best games ever made forever. And at that point, Sony will need people to pick up the mantle. So what happens if they make it their philosophy to not show any interest in those people and actively discourage them from trying to take those next steps in their career? In my view, Sony and, as a consequence, games as a whole suffer. And what could be worse for Sony is not only does this talent leave them, but what if Microsoft, who have been pretty aggressive in picking up studios and companies recently, say, oh, did the big bad Sony hurt you? Oh, why don't you come over here and just nestle under my wing, just right under here, and they take on that role, and suddenly in 10 years it's Microsoft with all the best first party studios, and the tables have turned. That's my 2 cents on it. I said it before and I shall say it again. I'm concerned about the direction that Sony are going in and the strategy that they seem to be taking. I think it's short-sighted and I think it's arrogant, and I think if they don't change something, sooner or later it's going to come back to bite them.